What will the future of work look like? I've been asked this question several times recently, and spoiler alert, nobody knows. Anybody that tells you that they know for certain what's coming in the future is lying to you, because the future by its nature is unknown. It has yet to be written. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't prepare for what's coming. This is something that I've learned from my mentor, Rebecca Ryan, who is a professional futurist and an all-around amazing human being. She's taught me so much about how to think productively about the future. And what she has taught me is that when we're trying to understand how to prepare for what's coming in the future, which is really what that question's about. It's about not so much what's coming, but what do I need to do to make sure that I'm not caught off guard like we all were by COVID, right? Because that was a terrible experience for most involved. We don't want to be caught off guard or unprepared again. How do we get prepared? And what she taught me is that you can start to prepare by looking for signals. And signals are trends that are unfolding or things that are happening that can tell you a bit about where we are headed or where we might be headed, so that you can start to think about the types of scenarios or the type of situations that maybe are more likely to play out in the future than others, so that you can start to think about how could I prepare myself or my organization or our leaders for what is most likely to happen as we head down this journey into the future of work. And so what I'd like to share with you today are 4 signals that I personally think are pretty strong signals and that are really important signals if you are trying to do the work of preparing your organization for what lies ahead. Here they are. Number 1, work is going to be more distributed than it was in the past, right? The model of work that we had in the past where everybody was together in one physical location for whatever, 5 days a week from 8 to 5 is over and gone. Right? We now know that we can work differently. The when, the where, and the how has, completely shifted, and we have such greater awareness of what is possible. And not just we, the organization, or we, the managers, but the employees also understand what's possible, and they also know what works better for them. A recent EY survey revealed that 80% of the employees in their sample say they want to work at least 2 days a week remotely. So this hybrid work, whatever that's going to end up looking like, is going to be with us for a long time. We can't unring this bell. Now, what does that exactly look like? I don't know. Nobody really knows. We're still sorting it out, but it's not going anywhere, right? The world of work is going to be more distributed and more fluid in the future than it was in the past. I think we can count on that based on what we're seeing today. The second signal is that well-being and mental health are key drivers of, we've discovered they're key drivers of employee retention, employee performance, employee satisfaction, right? All of the things that we really care about. In fact, interestingly, recently Gallup published some data where I said two interesting findings that reveal perhaps a signal that we should pay attention to. One is that for the first time in a decade, broad employee engagement, the way Gallup measures it, actually went down, started heading the wrong direction. It had been on a 10-year sort of bull run, if you will, going up. And this year, for the first time, it started going back down again, perhaps not, or perhaps coincidentally, or perhaps not. In that same sort of time frame, they also found that fewer than 1 in 4 U.S. employees in particular feel strongly that their organizations care about their well-being. I wonder if there's something going on here. And the other interesting thing is that in Gallup's data set, they have found over the course of their research that when an employee feels like the organization cares for their well-being, they are more likely to stay. They are more likely or less likely to experience burnout. They're more likely to be engaged. They're more likely to be an advocate for the organization, right? All of the things that we're chasing as a great employer. Well-being is at the center of it. And so well-being and being able to support well-being or sort of being involved in supporting well-being, mental, physical, and all the rest is something that we woke up to or were awoken to. I think that's a word, awoken to over the course of the pandemic or through the pandemic. And now we know that, and we have to put that at the center of our work. So that's number 2. Number 3 is that employees have changed. Employees' attitudes about work have certainly shifted. I mean, we see that in terms of, how employees are feeling about compensation, right? What they're expecting. We're seeing it in terms of, what they think about where they should have to work or when they should have to work. We are seeing it in terms of, the kind of meaning that they want to get back from the organization or how involved their organization should be in social issues. We're seeing it in terms of how they feel about whether they should have another job before they quit the one they have. There's a whole bunch of things that, and we have, a whole pile of research to tell us that employee attitudes have changed, employee perceptions about work have changed. The question is, will that sustain? I don't know. All I know is that based on where we are today, the employees that are walking through your door are certainly different in terms of their relationship and attitudes about work than they were 2 or 2.5 years ago. And that may be different again in another year or two. So we need to be ready for employee attitudes to continue to shift. So that's signal number 3, important one to pay attention to. And number 4, and this is probably unsurprising if you follow my work, is I think it's pretty clear, and the Great Resignation is probably the biggest data point we have around this, is that our traditional management models and processes and approaches are not cut out to succeed in this new era of work. We have all sorts of evidence of this, I think, of people quitting and moving their jobs. We've seen leaders really, really screw up in terms of how they've handled supporting employees through this time, how they've handled sort of having to let people go. I mean, we've just seen a whole bunch of things, how they're handling return to office or not return to office. Like it's been a hot mess in a lot of situations. And I think the unfortunate part of this is that we have thousands and thousands of managers that, haven't been equipped to navigate this world, right? To navigate this new world they live in, and they're struggling, and its consequences for them and its negative consequences for employees. And so this is a pretty big issue that I think if we don't deal with it, if we don't address it, is going to be an issue well into the future. So those are 4 big signals that I think are really important if you're thinking about what the future of work might look like or what you might want to do to prepare. So what action can you take right now? Well, there's 2 things that I would like to recommend to you in terms of how you can prepare for whatever future happens to unfold as we move forward. Number 1 is that if you aren't already in your organization, you need to today get started on really gaining a deep understanding of employee well-being and mental health and how you can actively and proactively support those for employees, and then start investing and working on that. Right? We know now that when employees don't feel well, when they don't feel like their organization is supporting their well-being, this is going to lead to turnover. It's going to degrade performance. It's going to create all sorts of issues. We've seen how well-being is a performance capacity issue. When we have diminished well-being, whatever that means, whether it's mental health, physical health, whether we're caregiving responsibilities at home are sort of overburdening us, whether we're burnt out, whatever that looks like, when our well-being is diminished, our capacity to perform at work is diminished as well. And so we have to get serious about supporting well-being. This work is not going anywhere. It is going to be here, and it's going to be at the center of our work to engage and lead employees to higher performance as we move forward. And that connects right to the second thing, is that if you haven't already started, you need to get serious about reskilling your managers. Your managers need a new toolkit. They need a new set of skills. They need a new set of mindsets. They need to be given permission to enter into a different relationship with employees so that they can adequately support them on this sort of uncertain, unclear journey that lies ahead of us. And I personally believe that starts with probably the most important skill that we can give managers is teaching them how to more effectively check in with their people. Right? Employees expect their managers to care for them. And so managers need to be able to care for them in a way where they're really invested in understanding and knowing what's going on with those employees, not just at work, but also in their lives, and then finding ways to be supportive, to be encouraging, to remove obstacles, to provide resources so that those employees can be more effective. So those are two things that, regardless of what you believe about what might happen or the different scenarios that could play out ahead of you, for your organization, for your managers and leaders, these are two places I would recommend you get started on right now to have impact and set your organization up to be successful well into the future, whatever that looks like. See you again soon.